Sabe quando algo mexe com você de um jeito difícil de explicar? Comigo aconteceu o seguinte. Em 2018, eu ainda comia de tudo e achava que me alimentava bem. Até que um dia, por acaso, assisti ao documentário A Dieta dos Gladiadores. O filme me chamou a atenção. De cara, eu achei que podia ter um quê de sensacionalismo hollywoodiano. Mas uma coisa ali me deixou com a pulga atrás da orelha. Na época, eu nunca tinha ouvido falar de alimentação vegetal integral. Mas o impacto do que eu vi foi tão forte que me impulsionou a investigar mais. Curioso que eu sou, fui direto nos créditos e li que o consultor científico do documentário era um tal de Dr. Michael Greger. Quando pesquisei sobre ele, encontrei uma história que me tocou profundamente, a da avó dele. Com um coração bem comprometido e desenganada pelos médicos, ela foi levada como último recurso à clínica do Nathan Pritikin. E o resultado foi que viveu por mais 30 anos. Pritikin fazia algo revolucionário para os anos 70, tratava doenças crônicas com uma dieta baseada em alimentos integrais, de origem vegetal, eliminando totalmente os industrializados. Aquilo me pegou de jeito porque me fez pensar no meu avô, na minha família, e em mim mesmo. Eu mergulhei de cabeça no site do Dr. Michael Greger. E em 2020, eu assisti a uma palestra que ele deu aqui perto de casa. Eu saí de lá com um exemplar autografado do livro Comer, Para Não Morrer, e uma sede insaciável por mais conhecimento. Eu comprei outros livros dele e no ano seguinte eu concluí o curso Plant-Based Nutrition da Universidade de Cornell. E lá estava ele de novo, como um dos professores. A influência do Dr. Greger na minha vida foi e continua sendo imensa. Foi graças a ele que mudei meus hábitos e hoje a minha saúde é a melhor que eu já tive. E não só a minha, mas também a de quem embarcou comigo nessa jornada. No Brasil, ele já lançou 2 livros, o Comer para Não Morrer e o Comer para Não Envelhecer. Esse último lançado no final de 2024. Ambos são leituras obrigatórias para quem quer cuidar da saúde com base na ciência e não em modismos. É com muita alegria e uma dose justa de tietagem que eu compartilho com você o bate-papo que tive com esse grande nome da nutrição baseada em plantas. Dr. Greger é americano e a entrevista foi gravada em inglês. Por isso, disponibilizamos esse conteúdo exclusivo aqui com legendas em português. Ah, e fiquem atentos, porque nela ele reconta a história da avó, aquela mesma que me marcou tanto. Com vocês, o médico que mudou a minha vida, Dr. Michael Greger.
We are honored to have you here today. Welcome to Tarja Verde, Dr. Greger.
I'm so glad to be here. I wish I could speak some Portuguese, but I apologize. I'm monolingual.
Oh, but your Portuguese was a great accent there. I love it. Yeah, so Dr. Greger, everyone has a story about how they arrived where they are today. Could you tell us what inspired you to become a doctor and to spread the whole food plant-based world? Like, was there a personal experience that ignited this passion?
Yeah, it was really actually all goes back to my grandmother. I was just a kid when my grandmother was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass operations. You basically run out of plumbing at some point, you get so scarred up inside. So she was confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. It talks about Frances Greger, my grandmother, They wheeled her in, and she walked out. So she was given her medical death sentence at age 65 thanks to a healthy diet. She was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I decided to practice lifestyle medicine. That's why I started the website, nutritionfacts.org. That's why I wrote the book, How Not to Die. That's why all the proceeds from all my books are donated directly to charity. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family.
Yes, and in fact, this story touched me on my heart, deep on my heart. When I first read it in the How Not to Die book, was amazing. And when I was in the event in West Palm Beach that were signing the books, I also had the privilege to hear the story myself. And this inspired me a lot. And also I bought the biography for Nathan Pritikin because of that.
Yeah.
It's amazing to know that back at the time in the 80s, we had so much good information from him. And even the 60 Minutes that he did was great information. But I don't know why we are here today.
Almost a half century ago, and still hundreds of thousands continue to die from these preventable, arrestable, potentially reversible diseases. The number one killer of Brazilian men and women is ischemic heart disease.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. So, talking about your books, you released 2 books in Brazil: Comer Para Não Morrer, How Not to Die in 2018, and Comer Para Não Envelhecer, How Not to Age in 2024. Why do the topics of healthy living and healthy aging matters to society in general, and what makes them specifically relevant for Brazilians?
Well, according to studies on identical twins, only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is due to genetics. So for what we can do over the majority of which we may have some control, we can look to these blue zones, these areas of exceptional longevity around the world, where they have among the highest rates of centenarians, those who live to be over 100 years old, have up to 10 times the rates of centenarians. More than 150 dietary surveys have been done in those areas, and they suggest that we should center our diets based on the diets of the healthiest and longest lived people. We center our diets around whole plant foods, so minimizing processed foods, meat, dairy, sugar, eggs, salt, alcohol, while maximizing fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils, nuts and seeds, mushrooms, herbs and spices, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These really are our healthiest choices.
Yeah. And now I'd love to focus on your latest book and what our listeners can learn from it. Like for your most recent book, Comer Para Não Envelhecer, How Not to Age. What are the main takeaways you hope your Brazilian readers will gain? And could you highlight a few core insights you believe are more impactful?
Well, the bottom line is the good news that we have tremendous power over our health destiny and longevity, and that the vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy enough diet and lifestyle. And one needn't make drastic changes. It's not all or nothing. Even just basic common sense lifestyle behaviors can mean living a decade longer, not smoking, not being obese, regular exercise, more fruits and vegetables, and it's never too late. Never too late to start moving, never too late to stop smoking, never too late to start eating healthier. We really do have the power.
Yeah, and I heard also that the average that we are living increase. I'm not sure if it's from 71 years old to 73 years old, but the time that we have living with chronic disease also increase from the last, I think, 20 years. Is that true? Like, I think we increased from 10 years with chronic disease to 13 years, and that is in your book. Is that true?
So it depends what population we are looking at. Currently, in Brazil, the average life expectancy for women is 77.4 years old. For men, 70.2 years old. Projected to 2050, expecting 83 and 77. And that's up significantly from 1990, for example, when Brazilian men were only living to 65, and the Brazilian women to 73. So there's been like a 4 or 5 year increase in that time. It's interesting. If you go back 15 years, the number one risk factor for death and disability in Brazil was malnutrition. And now the number one risk factor for death and disability is actually obesity. So we went from poor nutrition to kind of overnutrition. And so the number one cause is obesity. Number 2 is high blood sugar. So it's the diabetes caused by all that obesity. Number 3 is high blood pressure, also associated with not only being overweight, but having a high sodium diet. Number 4 killer of Brazilians, tobacco, smoking still. And then 5 other dietary risk factors. So all of which really can be controlled with a healthy enough diet and lifestyle. And actually, it was a Brazilian scientist out of Sao Paulo, Dr. Monteiro, who that came up with this concept of ultra-processed foods. Not enough to just cut back on meat, eggs, and dairy, but cut down on these industrial concoctions of food-like substances that now make up about 50% or more of the diets in the Western world. So we need to cut out the junk as well.
Yeah, and also like in Brazil, we used to eat like rice and beans a lot. This was the base of our diet. And what I see there is the ultra processed food was incorporated in the Brazilian lifestyle. And this, when the diseases start to skyrocketing. And this is like the Brazilians had this health choice, rice and beans, but now is a lot of like unprocessed food that I don't know even we can call these food. It's like edibles, like edible things.
Let's go back to rice and beans.
Yeah, that's true. And the brown rice would be better, right?
It would indeed, yes.
Yeah. So I would like to know if are you vegan? Because I read in your book that you don't like to label things. Can you explain on that?
I think we should eat primarily plants, not necessarily exclusively plants. A plant-based diet is really more about maximizing the intake of the healthiest foods, right? As a physician, these labels like vegetarian or vegan, I mean, that just tells me what you don't eat. I mean, do you actually eat vegetables? And look, it doesn't matter what you eat on your birthday or holidays or special occasions. It's really the day-to-day, what you eat on a day-to-day basis that adds up. And on a day-to-day basis, we really should try to center our diets around natural foods from fields, not factories, these unprocessed plant foods.
Awesome. Yeah. And but moving from this big picture to something more concrete too, like what's practical tips that your book can give us to our listeners to start implementing today to promote healthy aging?
Well, I mean, so I have not just talking about slowing the aging process in general, but specifically chapters on what to do to preserve your bones, bowels, bladder, circulation, your hair, hearing, hormone balance, immune function, joint health, mind, muscle, sex life, skin, teeth, vision, dignity and death, chapters on each. And so happy to talk about any specific system.
Yeah. Do you have any tips like how can we still enjoy social events and meals without feeling pressure? Like, do you have any personal tips for that?
Yeah, that's difficult. So, food is not just about the science, right? But it's about, food carries so many kind of social connotations in family, in business interactions, in friends. And so, if, you're going to someone's house, you can bring a meal, you can bring food that, who can have a problem with bringing extra food to a party? That's great. And then at least you have something that you can eat and enjoy. You can eat before you're going, so you're not ravished. You're not really hungry all the time. And I don't know what the situation is there. Usually there are some things you can cobble together on a menu that are healthier than otherwise. Or you can just be like, look, for today, it's a holiday. I'm just going to forget about it. I'm going to do whatever I want. And then tomorrow I'll get back on the program and eat healthier. I mean, it's really, again, it's not what you eat today or tomorrow or next week. It's like, what are you eating for the next few decades? And so you have to have that kind of long-term view. And it's really, your body has a remarkable capacity to bounce back from injury. And so, there's some people who are so-called social smokers who pick up a cigarette a few times a year at a party or something, but they don't make a habit out of it. I'm sure your body can get rid of all that tar and clear yourself out. It's just, well, oh my God, if you're smoking every day, when your body healing processes just can't keep up, and you end up with these horrible diseases like COPD and lung cancer, etc. And so the same thing with diet, unless something like food poisoning, where, one bad whatever could really be serious. But in terms of chronic disease, it's what you're eating over time. And so, but if you find yourself in social situations very commonly, you really do have to find a way. Okay, how am I gonna be able to enjoy this time without starving, or without having any kind of unnecessary friction? Even when I'm traveling around, I haven't had too much difficulty. I mean, I'm not eating as healthy as I'd like, but usually you can find some healthier options wherever you go.
Yeah, I heard Dr. Cadwell Elsenstein. He says that sometimes he called the restaurant before going there and talked to the chef.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
He says that normally the chef, he's very happy on having these advanced notice,
Oh,
and
that's nice.
this is a good advice too. And we used to say also in Brazil that the problem is not what you eat from Christmas to New Eve, but what you eat from New Eve to Christmas.
Oh, there we go. All right. Okay.
So yeah, this is the thing, like a healthy routine against like the exceptions, really not a problem, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it depends on people's psychology. Some people really have this kind of black and white personality, and they really need to kind of stick to a rigid plan, and they know if they go off the rails, then they're going to stay off the rails and not get back. But if you can go back and forth, then go on that cruise and that buffet and whatever, God knows. As long as when you're able to come back, you're able to kind of restore your day-to-day healthy lifestyle.
And if you want to have a good health, I heard from Dr. Will Bosevics that we need to have at least 90% of the diet should be like plant-based, whole food plant-based. And the other 10% your body you're going to recover, and you are explaining to us here. But if you have the maximum you want, like you tried the 100%, is there a difference in your health? Can you have a better health, or is pretty much the same?
Well, so the Blue Zone's food guidelines, the foundation of the Blue Zone's food guideline, their number one recommendation is to make your diet at least 95% plant-based. So it's close. But there's no data comparing the two, 95% to 100% plant-based. I mean, the closest we have, there's a study in Asia comparing disease rates among two different the Zen retreats, these two kind of Buddhist retreats, where there's a nice study in that people, we knew exactly what they were eating because they're all eating the exact same thing every single day. They had no outside food coming in. They had no junk food, no soda. And these two centers differed in really only one aspect, and that is one allowed a few servings of meat a week. I think it was like 2 or 3 servings a week, and the other was completely plant-based. And if you would have asked me if I would see difference in disease rates between these two groups, I don't know if I probably would have predicted that there probably wouldn't be enough of a difference. They're both eating these extraordinarily clean diets. Maybe just a few servings a week wouldn't do anything. But it turns out that just a few servings a week, they had significantly higher diabetes rates. They end up with significantly higher diabetes rates. And you do see meat consumption associated with higher diabetes. So that was a bit of a surprise. Now, this was not a randomized controlled trial. They didn't randomize people to different diet groups. They did have, they were very similar in many aspects, but maybe there's something that wasn't tested in the study or not. But that's really the only, the only kind of data that's out there. There was a study on South Asians and Adventist South Asians that found that those who were vegetarian and then started eating meat once a week or more had cut significantly, cut, I believe, 3 years off their lifespan, significantly higher rates of diabetes and weight gain and heart disease. And so that's interesting. That's kind of like the opposite direction. But it's possible that people who backtrack on their diet may also backtrack on other healthy lifestyle behaviors. They try to control for a lot of other lifestyle factors, but it's not perfect. The strongest evidence we have for eating healthy are these interventional trials where you randomize people to different diets and you see what happens. Now, if you do that with healthy people, it would take so long to get the results. It would be too expensive to kind of run those trials. But if you take really sick people, then you can actually see differences within weeks and months in terms of outcomes, right? I mean, these are people teetering on the verge of death, right? And so people are actually going to die. Some people, a significant percentage, are going to die in the next 6 months. Whereas you do healthy people, no one's going to die in the next 6 months, or at least we certainly hope so. And so that's where trials like the Lifestyle Heart Trial from Dr. Dean Ornish comes along. You take people, same thing with Caldwell Esselstyn, take people with severe, serious heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and then you randomize them into two groups, which is what Ornish did. And you see significant decrease in events like heart attacks, and significant improvement not only in symptoms like crushing chest pain, but you can do these nuclear scans and see significant improvements in blood flow to the heart muscle itself after making these dietary changes, putting people on a plant-based diet and lifestyle program. Caldwell Esselstyn did this large case series of over 100 people where he said, these people with serious life-threatening heart disease, but some people went on the diet, some people didn't go on the diet. And you can compare the difference. I mean, it's not the perfect study, but you see these absolutely remarkable differences in people who went on it versus those that didn't. And so, it's the combination of evidence from both the cohort studies following hundreds of thousands of people over time and seeing which foods are associated with which disease, and these interventional trials more in the short term really show, and these areas around the world that live the longest and the healthiest lives, people eating, how are they eating, how are they living, it all really forms the same picture of centering our diets around whole plant foods. So that means not just minimizing meat, egg, and dairy, but also minimizing these ultra-processed foods that are not good for our health.
And also not minimizing, right? Get rid of what's bad for you.
Well, ideally, but again, on Christmas, you can have that cotton candy or whatever, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, you say minimize because it's not like poison. Right? There are people that eat Twinkies and Coca-Cola all the time, and they look fun. Yes. I mean, they're doing terrible damage.
They're vegan.
So you try to decrease as much as possible. And it depends on people's life circumstances and what they're able to do. And so that's why I try not to be as black and white. It's just these foods you eat more of, these foods you eat less of, and the more you do it, the better. There's a difference between smoking 3 packs a day and smoking 1 pack a day. Ideally, we wouldn't want anyone to smoke, but it makes a difference.
Yeah, I read in the book of Dean Ornish, and he said that in the past, he was more like moderate, you can increase more plants in your diet, you're going to have a better health. But what he saw is that the impact on health is much more aggressive when you are 100% change. You really decide to change. So this is going to motivate you to keep the change, to keep plant-based.
That's a good point. No, that's a good point. And so that's why often when patients have come into my office, rather than, some people, they're only able to make small changes. And I'm like, okay, well, let's swap out soda for water and let's, add some fruits and vegetables. And, there's small little tweaks you can make. But if people are willing, what I like to do is, have people for 3 weeks go all in. And really eat healthy. And it's kind of an experiment. People have a hard time wrapping around their idea of like, oh my God, I'm not going to eat whatever no, just 3 weeks. Just let's try it for 3 weeks. And the hope, and you can do labs before and after, and you can show the dramatic benefits. But the hope is that people will actually feel so much better. They have more energy, sleeping better, less painful periods, better digestion, whatever it is, that after 3 weeks, it's their own body telling them that this is a better way to eat. And so it's not like a doctor wagging their finger in their face. Their own body's telling them. And so hopefully that will provide extra motivation to stick with it, or at least go back to it should they ever need to. But you don't know how good you're going to feel until you give it a try.
And you also need to wait because your body needs to acquire the new taste, right? The pleasure trap from Dr. Lyle.
Yeah.
He says that we need time because we love the ultra processed food because the dopamine and all the hormones that they release. And this change takes time. We need to train our body to like the healthy food, right?
Absolutely. And it can take many weeks. So, for example, most of the data is on the salt reduction, sodium reduction. Normally, you put people on a low salt diet, everything tastes like cardboard. People think, oh my God, I can't live like this. But then something miraculous happens. After a few weeks, at the first day, you give people and have them salt soup to taste how they like it. And then you put people on a low salt diet, and after a few weeks, you give them the same soup, and the salt that you originally liked is actually too salty. You actually prefer lower salt soup. And so the hope is you get to a point where normal, natural, healthy foods taste delicious. Our taste buds have been numbed by these hyper sweet, hyper salty, hyper fatty, ultra processed foods. And only when we're able to kind of clean our palates can we get back to enjoying simple foods. And so, corn on the cob, no butter, no salt, actually tastes delicious. Or, a sweet potato with a little cinnamon or something. Someone looks at me eating that and they're like, wow, they look at me as if I'm like some aesthetic monk. Like, oh, it's amazing. It's great that you can do that. I could never eat like that. But no, you don't understand. It's actually delicious to me. It wouldn't be delicious to me when I was still eating cheeseburgers and all that. But now eventually you end up in the best of both worlds, where it actually tastes delicious. You really craveably enjoy the foods, and you get to live longer and enjoy life better.
Yes, that's true. Like it happens to me too. Like every time I go to these gatherings, they look at me and say, "What you are eating?" But yeah, and I also would like to address the term plant-based because what is the difference between only saying plant-based, that can be a lot of things, and whole food plant-based? Because in Brazil we use the term plant-based, but I think it's important just to know the difference and the impact in our health.
Well, so, technically, also there's all sorts of terrible foods that are derived from plants. So soda, right, from the sugar cane, there's vegan Oreo cookies and things like that, where you can have absolutely terrible foods like hydrogenated vegetable oil, like Crisco, like shortening. That's from plants, so just saying plant-based, you can eat a lot of kind of plant-based junk food. And so you're saying, no, it's not just we want people to eat foods from plants as opposed to foods from animals, but we want people to eat unprocessed foods as opposed to processed foods, ideally. And so to combine both of those concepts, fewer animals, fewer processed foods, came Dr. T. Colin Campbell, professor emeritus at of biochemistry at Cornell University, came up with this term whole food plant-based to kind of to give us a kind of a target. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about eating the healthiest foods out there. And in fact, when you take his physician's son and daughter-in-law actually did a study where they took vegetarians and vegans and put them on a whole food plant-based diet, and they had all these really remarkable health benefits. They lost weight, their cholesterol got better, suggesting even vegans should eat a little more plant-based too, and cut down on junk. Look, vodka is plant-based, right? It comes from potatoes, right? Yeah, but it's not like the healthiest thing to eat. It's better to eat the potato, or even better, there's healthier foods out there. And so, but again, so for example, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, rather than plant-based, they say plant predominant. You're trying to get this sense of, it's not like some religion, some cult. It's not like there's some magical properties. It's just saying we really should, when we're looking down at the plate, when we're looking at our diet day to day, really the center We should really center our diets around these healthiest foods. Doesn't mean you can never have a piece of candy or whatever. It's just saying, look, this is really the predominant source of calories in a diet, should really be the healthiest foods, because you think about it, our entire body, we basically get kind of rebuilt almost from scratch year to year in terms of the number of cells that die off and are reborn. And so our entire body, we are what we literally physically, we're made of water, air, sunlight, food. And so, it's like, what do you want to build your body out of? Some shoddy building materials in the drive-through, or really based on some of the best foods on the planet?
Awesome. Yes. And Dr. Greger, to wrap this up, what are some common misconceptions about aging and nutrition that Comer Para Não Envelhecer, How Not to Age, helps clarify? And a glass of red wine a day is good or bad?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, things have changed. I mean, we've always known that heavy drinking during pregnancy, binge drinking was bad ideas. But there has been this controversy about moderate drinking. Those who tend to live the longest are not the abstainers that drink zero alcohol, but those that imbibe a few drinks a week. Unfortunately, that appears to be an artifact of what's called the sick quitter effect, which arises from the systemic misclassification of former drinkers as if they were lifelong abstainers. The same reason you can find that there's studies showing higher mortality rates among those who quit smoking compared to those who continue to smoke. And how does that make any sense? Well, why did they stop smoking? They stopped smoking because they got sick, because they're dying. Well, no wonder. And similarly, that's why you can find higher rates of liver cirrhosis among non-drinkers compared to drinkers. Because why are they non-drinkers? They're non-drinkers because they got liver cirrhosis. They get really sick. They were forced to stop drinking. And so if you actually go back and you control for that, then no longer is there any protection at low levels of drinking. And according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the World Health Organization, the World Heart Federation, the safest level of drinking is none. Grapes, barley, potatoes, really best eaten in their non-distilled form. Johnny Walker, no substitute for actual walking. So unfortunately, we really should try to cut down on alcohol. And in terms of kind of age-related myths, I think one of the most persistent is around protein. When it comes to protein and aging, less may actually be more. Reducing protein intake, meaning restricting protein intake down to recommended levels, which is 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram of body weight, is one of the only things I could find that can block all 11 of the aging pathways, boosting NAD, improving immunity, decreasing oxidative stress and inflammation and insulin resistance, as well as the cancer-promoting growth hormone IGF-1. Surprisingly, there is no benefit to adding extra protein to the diets of older men and women in terms of muscle mass, muscle strength, or muscle performance. Instead, the excess protein most of us get causes a drop in the pro-longevity hormone FGF21, a drop in testosterone, and a worsening of the age-accelerating hormone mTOR. So we should strive to stick to the recommended 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram of body weight. Comes out to be about 45 grams a day for the average height woman, 55 a day for the average height man. And ideally from plant sources as opposed to animal sources, because of all because food is kind of a package deal. So you want to get your protein and not have the saturated fat and cholesterol and hormones along with it, but instead have the fiber and the folate and the potassium and all the other wonderful things that come along with the protein in plant sources like beans. There has to be some great Brazilian bean dishes that we can all tell people to eat.
Yes, of course. But high protein, like from plants, is it still like bad for our health when we're aging? Like, and what age we're talking about? Like, I'm 48. Is that I need to start reducing protein intake too?
So at age 65, we're actually increasing from 0.8 to 1.0 grams, just because our body is less able to absorb protein kind of as we get older. As long as we're getting it from whole food sources, I'm not as worried. Basically, the reason you're restricting protein is to restrict a particularly problematic amino acid, both the branch chains and something called methionine. Methionine restriction is the most powerful anti-aging intervention that we've discovered to date. It's an amino acid found predominantly in animal protein, so you can cut down on methionine to live longer and healthier by eating less food across the board, like caloric restriction, that'll cut down your methionine, or you can just cut down on your protein intake, that'll reduce methionine, or even if you keep your protein intake the same, but just switch from animal protein sources like meat to plant protein sources like beans, will reduce your methionine as well. But if you're, I wouldn't want people adding, plant protein powder or things to smoothies or something. There's no reason to go out of your way to get more protein in your diet, but we should definitely be eating lots of healthy protein-rich foods like legumes.
So taking the same subject here, so what about the supplements? What is your take on supplements? Should we use them?
Well, it's critically important for anyone eating a healthy diet to ensure a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12, which is not made by plants, not made by animals either, made by little microbes that blanket the earth. So we used to get, B12 drinking out of a mountain stream or something, but now we chlorinate the water supply to kill off any bacteria. So you don't get a lot of B12 in our water anymore. Don't get a lot of cholera either. That's a good thing that we live in a nice sanitary world. Our fellow great apes get all the B12 they need eating bugs, dirt, and feces. I prefer supplements. So 2,000 micrograms once a week is all you need for B12. It's super cheap. So cyanocobalamin is the most shelf-stable form. That's the one I recommend. Or you can have B12 fortified foods. I'm not sure what's there in the Brazilian market, but either way, a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12, critically important. The only other vitamin not made by plants is vitamin D, which is made by animals such as ourselves. When we walk outside, it's the sunshine vitamin, but some people are not getting sufficient sunshine. They have a desk job inside all day, in which case they may need to supplement with vitamin D as well.
And the last misconception here is about we cannot outrun bad genetics, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. The role of exercise in longevity is actually, to my surprise, really controversial. I mean, the evidence supporting exercise for general health is absolutely overwhelming, but in terms of longevity, it's actually really quite controversial. It's one of the most surprising things I found in the book. I encourage people to check out the exercise chapter in How Not to Age, or as you would say in Portuguese,
Comer para não envelhecer.
There you go.
There you go. So, Dr. Greger, I would love to hear how Brazilian readers have responded to your message on healthy living and aging.
I keep getting invited down to speak in Brazil, and I'm all excited until I look at how long the plane trips are. I'm used to I'll go to Europe, I got go fly to California.
From Florida is 8 hours direct flight.
Well, Florida is about 3 hours, so it's a long flight. So maybe one of these days I'll do an actual tour where I speak, but to come down to speak at one thing, it's hard to justify that much travel. And so, now with Zoom and everything, but if I was able to arrange, a number of different cities and speak at a number of medical schools and hospitals, then it might be worth to actually do a tour. And I'd love to come down and see everybody. It's been a tremendous response. And I apologize for not getting out there. I have a similar problem with Australia. There's a lot of interest in Australia, but it's a long way.
If you go, let me know. Then I can guide you there.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Dr. Greger, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. I'm sure our listeners in Brazil will appreciate these perspectives, and we truly appreciate your availability and dedication to help people make informed choices about their health. Thank you very much.
But all the research in the world is useless unless there's people like you in the trenches actually putting it into use and getting this information out there. So keep up the good work yourself.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It is amazing talking to you, really. Thanks
so much, everybody.